Welcome to Living 4D with Paul Chek. Today we are going to talk about You Be You with Drew Canole. Drew is the founder of Organifi, Fit Life TV, somebody I've known for a lot of years, but I felt like I had to talk to this guy because he's accomplished a hell of a lot. And like me, he comes from some challenging beginnings. And I was recently given his book, You Be You, Detox Your Life, Crush Your Limitations, and Own Your Awesome. And I actually didn't even realize Drew had written that book or any books. It just slipped under my radar. And so, in prep for the interview, which we were going to focus more on Organifi, but I was so impressed with the book, I said, well, geez, there's a lot we got to talk about. And Drew and I have some childhood parallels. So, Drew, welcome to Living 4D with Paul Chek and you.
Thank you, Paul. So surreal to be here.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah, this is excellent. Well, and I'm not surprised you haven't heard of the book just because I'm surrounded by a whole cadre of other works from Rumi, from all these deep, Jung's books over here. This is insane, man. And this is just one room.
Yeah. I've got probably $500,000 worth of books in here.
I need to up my book game,
Yeah. Somebody once told me something that was really funny. They said, never trust a man whose television screen is bigger than his bookshelf. I said, there's some wisdom to that.
Yeah.
But, Drew, I was really impressed with You Be You. And
Thank
I'm
you.
also super impressed with Organifi, which is, why you and I have a working relationship to share that with people on the podcast. And I've had nothing but positive feedback from people. And I think you know me well enough to know I'm really critical about what I attach my name to or recommend to people because I don't want the karma of selling garbage to people for money. I'd rather be broke and happy than rich and confused.
Likewise.
So I'm grateful for that. But, to start off, I would love it if you could sort of encapsulate your journey. Reading You Be You, I realized for the first time you and I had some interesting parallels to our childhood, our father relationship, just things that I'm reading and I'm going, wow, it's amazing how when you heal, if you choose to heal, you can open the flower of the soul's potential. And I think you've definitely done that. I mean, you've built some very successful businesses, and I think from everything that I can see, you're truly living your own dream. And so, why don't we start off by getting a little synopsis of how it all started for you and unfolded?
Yeah. So, I grew up in Michigan. From Michigan, I like to say I chose my parents, and it wasn't an ideal situation. We'll just say that. Cadillac, Michigan, I was born into a family where my parents were very young. They were very, strapped for cash, and they chose to do copious amounts of heroin and meth, and they were drug addicts.
It's funny how people that often have no money get into expensive drugs.
Exactly.
I've never figured that one out.
Yeah. So total drug addicts. And I witnessed this at a young age. I witnessed people very much torturing themselves with the erratic nature of the drugs and the up and down and the relationships that they had. And they were just in constant turmoil. And I witnessed this at a young age. So therefore, the turmoil revealed itself in my life. I was tortured. I was beat. My dad would shove my head underneath the bathtub water. And if I came up out of it 30 seconds later and I cried, he would put my head back under the water. I mean, I was 3-4 years old.
So you were already an MK Ultra.
Yeah. I was a Navy SEAL in training.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is
a little early.
A little early for that. So, of course, my relationship to the masculine and men in my life suffered big time.
Yeah.
And it's still something I'm working on every day.
Yeah.
Because I don't think trauma really goes away. It's just we figure out how to manage it better. And
I think we figure out
how to
make meaning out of it.
Yeah, there you go.
If you don't make meaning out of it, then it stays trauma.
Yeah.
But if you find a way to make meaning out of it, then empathy and compassion flow through it. That's my experience.
Yeah.
You know.
So instead of it happened to me, it happened for me, kind of a thing.
Yeah, you know, I totally agree with that. And the thing is that in shamanic circles, you know, I've studied a lot of the great shaman and worked with a number of them. And what the great shaman, people like Angeles Arian, will tell you is that typically those that are destined to become healers, guides, or shaman choose challenging childhoods and gain a lot of the kinds of wounds that turn out to be the kinds of wounds that the most people suffer from. Therefore, when they heal those wounds, all the energy trapped in the pain and in the emotion and in the body is freed and now becomes liberated energy that they can use to transfer through love and connection to others. But the key thing is that whatever we really heal, we can naturally see in other people, and we know how to touch, and we know how to work with it because we've already had our trial of tears.
Absolutely.
So seeing where you've come from, you know, and what you've created, it's pretty apparent to me that you've made that conversion.
And I had buckets of trauma.
Yeah.
And like I said in the book, you know, trauma is fuel.
I love that. Yeah, I got a question on that in there.
Yeah, so using that at a young age. And I think one of the things that really liberated me is I wanted to escape so bad from the 3D, from the material world, that I was going into dream time. And at a very young age, I had my first lucid dream when I was 4.
Wow.
And I woke up and I saw this monster in this dream. And for every night for months, I would wet the bed as a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
And I realized in the dream, I'm like, this is a dream. This monster isn't real. And as soon as I did that, I had compassion for this monster that made me piss the bed every night. And the monster shrunk, and I held this little baby monster in my hands.
Wow.
And I had love for this thing. And then I went out into the awakened day, and I realized that monster at night was the same man that was attacking me every single day.
Yeah.
And I just changed the way I observed it.
Yeah.
So the projection started to shift the reception of my life.
Yeah.
And we ended up escaping from that situation. My sister and I, she'd gotten stabbed in the eye with a fork.
Jesus.
She escaped out a window, went to the neighbor, and the state police came, took us away, and then we were in foster care for another year, being abused in foster care again. Because you put a kid that is taught, you know, swear words are cool by their parents and everything, and I'm indoctrinated around all these other kids that are supposed to be quote unquote good.
Yeah.
And I'm like, can you please pass the fucking potatoes?
Yeah.
And then I'm being whipped in the bathroom and soap shoved in my mouth and trained like a Navy SEAL again, you know?
Yeah.
So it was an amazing experience because you're right.
It certainly can be amazing when you heal it, but when you're in it, it's no fun ride because I've lived through those very types of things myself.
Yeah. Yeah. So lots of lessons at a young age, which, like you said, catapulted me to really understand as above, so below.
Yeah.
And know that whatever I'm creating in the moment is my own manifestation. And I lived my whole life like that. Like I'm in the matrix, dude.
Yeah.
And here we are. We can either let it control us or we can separate ourselves from the box altogether.
There's nothing outside of the matrix except non-duality. And then there's no I to have an experience, to love, to live. So, you know, Arthur Young, who is someone I've studied a lot, he invented the Bell helicopter and devoted his rest of his life to the study of consciousness. He says, first you have to learn the laws of the matrix, then you learn to create beyond them.
I love that.
Yeah, and so most people, unfortunately, are trying to figure out how to cheat the matrix. But he really, in his teachings, makes it clear you can never do that because the matrix is the very basis of everything about you and everything about the universe. So it's kind of like trying to cheat yourself into not believing you have a body. All you can do is deceive yourself, you know? So I think, you know, working with the matrix and realizing that it's powered by the consciousness of that which is whole and beyond our own ego's perception gives us this opportunity to look deeper. And, you know, you described this in your book of like this feeling of being a kid, like saying to God, why the hell am I here? I had the exact same experience multiple times. And I also had major openings happen to me as a result of the trauma, which ultimately I found out I could remote view and astral travel. And then, through a series of experiences, I realized that the trauma had given me skills that now I was using to help other people heal. And when I could actually connect the dots and realize chances of me figuring out how to do these things that are classically shamanic skills,
yes,
had I been raised in a normal family, probably wouldn't have ever happened. I wouldn't have had any reason to. Plus, for the average person to learn how to do things like use clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, remote viewing, astral travel, takes a fair bit of work because you have to undo all your programming that says you can't do it.
Absolutely.
But when you go through the kind of experiences we did, the cosmic egg gets cracked. And so the soul of us just pours right out of the holes. And in that outpouring comes the realization of, oh my God, the world's a lot bigger and more magical than I could imagine while I was in this shell called the self. So, where, from there, you went through your childhood, but obviously you found passions and developed some amazing businesses. So talk to us about that transition out of sort of the jungle of the pain and into the light of the wholeness of Drew.
Yes, I love that. I really worked on turning the trauma that I had into trust and faith.
That's a beautiful comment right there.
Yeah. So I had this absolute trust that my version of God back then, because it's constantly evolving,
Me too.
Yeah. That's what I like about you, Paul.
As much as I study, I'm like, when you really figure out what God is, you can't fixate on an idea or you haven't learned.
I thought it was so beautiful pulling up here because you literally live on an unnamed road.
Yes.
And you can't name it.
It's
powerful stuff. So turning trauma into trust was my big focus. And I knew I had to shift my feelings and the way that my body felt in these individual moments with my parents.
Yes.
Right? Even my adopted parents were the most loving. I got adopted when I was 6. My mother was suffering from ovarian cancer, so she couldn't have kids. Young age of like 26, 27. And she's one of these women that has the biggest heart on the planet, only wanted to have children was her lifelong goal.
Yeah.
And that was taken away from her. So she was very much doing the foster home thing. She had like 11 kids in, and the state would always take them back. And she's like, why, God? I just wanted to have kids. And she went through her own metamorphosis. So when my sister April and I entered the house in Lake City, Michigan, small town, less than 700 people, 2 stoplights, big city living. When we walked in, every hair on our body stood up, and it was an answer to her prayers to have children. And she knew in that moment, and I knew that these were going to be my new parents. Given that, they were incredible with patience. They were incredible with understanding and compassion. My mom and dad. My dad's a truck driver. Mama was a janitor my whole life.
Wow.
So crazy, right?
Working people.
Blue collar. I like to say we're at the bottom of the middle class people, which is an awesome place to be. But I also learned a lot about money from them. And I learned how not to, project the money situation and how to create abundance given the fact of where I am today. So it's interesting because every situation, like we said, we're choosing it. Yeah. And I realized those same powers that you talk about, like the astral travel, the remote viewing, I learned at a very young age to read people.
Yeah.
And I learned energy, like feeling their energy field.
Yes. Yeah, the truth is in the energy, not the words.
Yeah. And seeing beyond the egg.
Yeah.
The human egg.
Yeah.
And really tapping into the energy field and seeing before they know what they need, how to speak to that.
Yes.
So one thing my employees say, and we have 120 people on the team now.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Is I'm always in the future talking to their highest version of who they are.
Yes.
And I trust people way before they even deserve it.
Yeah.
And I think as a leader, that's important for us.
Well, it sets up a field of love, acceptance, awareness. It's you know, if we create a sacred space within ourselves, then we also do that for everybody we're in contact with, and it's a real journey. I mean, I tell people you don't need a church or a temple. Any relationship will guide you to the awareness of what needs to be healed, so you can ultimately
for real
become what you're meant to be. And intimate relationships, of course, are the intense version of that. But having employees is ultimately like having your own children.
I look at it like that too.
You know, it is.
Yeah. And one thing is, I'm not separate from them.
No.
Right. We said we're in this together since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
I can look at May, I can look at Jamel, my CEO now, the rest of the people on the leadership team and throughout the company, and we're in this together.
Yeah.
Like we're very much a family. And that level of trust, turning the trauma into trust, was huge in my business, and it was massively huge in growing up. Because one of my natural gifts in trusting everybody and speaking from that place was enrolling people in my vision.
Yes.
Right. So vision is everything. And I'd like to think one of my superpowers is speaking to the vision and allowing people to join it.
Yeah.
And that was really a catalyst. You know, if I hadn't gone through it, like you said, I wouldn't have those abilities.
No.
So
you'd just be a more immature soul that is here to play in the sandbox for a while.
For real.